One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
O'Reilly! Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Coming up on episode 216 of Wheel Bearings, Robbie rides a big BMW motorcycle, and we've got a pair of Ford plug-in hybrids on opposite ends of the spectrum with the Escape and the Lincoln Aviator. We've also got first drives of the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, the Toyota Tundra, and some information about GM's upcoming Ultra Cruise system, along with an interview with Dave Pericak and Darren Palmer from Ford. All that and more coming up next. Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. This is episode 216 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abu-Al-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
I am Nicole Wakelin from Auto Vital.
I am Roberto Baldwin from TechCrunch.
And let's see, who wants to go first? Let's have Robbie go first and tell us about something a little different that he drove or rode.
So this week I rode the BMW R18 motorcycle. This is BMW's cruiser. Cruisers are typically something like this big. You're typically going to see from Harley Davidson. And what BMW has done is they've made a very, very nice Harley Davidson. They've made the best Harley Davidson. That's what they've done right now with the R18. With a boxer engine, yes. So you have the huge boxer engines, ka-blah, 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 shooting back and forth. If you've ever seen a BMW motorcycle, you see those huge, giant, just sticking out the side. They're ginormous. And when you're riding, like it's balanced, it's fine. But when you stop, you can feel it like moving the bike back and forth ever so slightly. So it's like bop, 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 bop. You're missing this, but I'm moving my hands back and forth like I'm doing a little, like a very tiny cha-cha. The
R18, I think, doesn't that imply that it's an 1800 cc engine?
1800 cc. Now, my second car was a Honda Civic. Yeah, it's bigger than my first car had a 2-liter engine. My second car had a 1.6-liter engine. And so this motorcycle not only has a bigger engine, I believe it has more power than that vehicle. It was a 90 Honda Civic DX. I think it had like 89-ish horsepower. This motorcycle has 91 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque, and it only weighs, relatively speaking, versus a car, 761 pounds. So it's not light in motorcycle terms. This is not it is not a super bike. It is not a sport bike. It is not it's not a dual sport. It's not any of those. It's a cruiser, and it's unapologetically a cruiser, just big and chrome and shiny, and it's a very pretty bike. It's beautiful. It's got all the shiny bits that you want, and you can make it loud. Here's a fun little thing that I want to share with the world. Whenever you see like a Harley or anyone else riding a cruiser and they're just like blum blum, they don't have to do that. That is not a thing that needs to be done. That doesn't keep the motor running. It doesn't unless the timing is just horribly off. They don't need to do that. They're just doing that. Someone asked me once that, so I just want to tell the world. If you wondering why Harley Davidsons are riding around going blum blum, just revving the engine like all the time, just because it's loud. That's why they're doing it. Because they can. It's like me driving around in a car with an air horn, just for the hell of it.
An air horn.
So that's my little jump on the that doesn't need to get done, and unless they're very bad at driving and using a clutch. Anyway, so yeah, it makes a loud blum blum if you so desire. It has 3 riding modes. It has rain, which is for the rain slick. It has rock, and it has roll. So it's a German motorcycle that is looking at an American motorcycle, Harley Davidson, which is about as American as apple pie when it comes to vehicles, built in Milwaukee. Well, they're built all over the world, by the way. Harley Davidson aren't just built in Milwaukee. They're built in different regions because it's cheaper to sell in a region if you build it there. So it's a German motorcycle built essentially to be an American motorcycle, and its drive modes are rock and roll. Which is
what is
sort of,
So what is the difference?
So rock is the loud, powerful. It's sport mode. It's essentially sport mode for the bike. It's loud. It's you get more low end torque. It's ready to rock and roll. It's ready to rock. Roll.
But not roll.
Roll is more subdued. It's really nice for sort of riding around town where you're shifting nonstop. You're just like every stop sign, every stoplight. It's a much easier, smoother riding experience. It's not as loud, so you're not. Someone rode by my house last night and set off a car alarm because they could. Because they could. That's the only reason they did that, people. Because they could. Because they could. So it has rock, it has roll, it's very comfortable, it's very much a cruiser. It has this really nice clutch and transmission. It's very easy to shift. But you also get that nice clunk. When you ride a cruiser, you get these, when you're shifting gears, when you ride a motorcycle, it's nice when you can hear that clunk, like as the bike is shifting gears. As the gears engage, you get clunk. It's very satisfying. You don't really hear it on cars, but it's nice when you're like, so there you go. So that's what it's like riding the R18. It's a very nice bike. I'm going to have video of it and another variant of it on my YouTube channel at some point in hopefully the near future. It starts at $17,500. It is not a cheap bike. Motorcycles are, for the most, if you want a nice motorcycle, they're pretty expensive. The one I rode had the premium package, which it has adaptive headlights. It has hill start control, so you don't roll backwards. If you've ever ridden a motorcycle in the city, what you end up doing is using your right foot to sort of hold the brake and and I still do that even when I have hill start control on motorcycles. But this has it, so it won't roll back into the Hyundai sitting behind you. It's got a reverse assist, which I haven't tried yet. I don't know. It has cruise control. A lot more motorcycles have cruise control now. It's nice when you're on long rides because, if you keep your hand and your wrist and your arm in the same position for 3 hours, it kind of starts to hurt. So the price that I tested it at, $22,615. So let's see. So you could buy a Ford Maverick or you can buy the 2021 BMW R18. And I'll be riding a different variant of this later on, and I'll give you an update. It's supposed to have some other stuff on it. So, but no, Okay, so here I always, whenever I think of cruisers, I think of boomers.
Yes.
I am like right smack hardcore Gen X. Like you can't get more Gen X than me, and so, but no, I actually enjoyed it. I don't know if I would buy something like this. I'm still not. I'm just like, when it comes to cruise, to me, it's kind of almost like the SUV of motorcycles. But yeah, no, it's a nice bike if you're looking for a cruiser.
So how's that price compare to a similarly equipped Harley?
Oh, let's look that up.
Or the cruisers from the Japanese brands like a Honda, like a Goldwing, or would the Goldwing be classed as a cruiser? I mean, I think they.
Yeah, a Gold's
cruiser.
That's
like big V twin too.
Yeah, those are. I mean, those are the Goldwing's just something else entirely. It is an amazing. They're just huge, gigantic. Man, how big is a Goldwing? Goldwing's like the size of an MG.
Expedition, I think.
Yeah, they're about the size of an Expedition. So I'm looking at what we got here on the old Harley website for cruisers. I'm looking for something that's sort of close to it, maybe the Heritage Classic, which starts at 19. So it's about the same. We're talking, you have things that are 19, 20, 18. So it's about the same price. You can get the inexpensive Harley, the Iron 883 for, $10,000, which is a nice entry level price for a motorcycle, or the 1200. These are kind of smaller bikes though. If you're a big person like me, you end up going 1200 or larger. Anything 800 and below, you sort of look like a bear riding the tricycle.
I think that's what you should get, because I like that image in my head.
Yeah, looking at the Honda motorcycle website, they've got the Goldwings under touring bikes, and cruisers. They've got like the Fury is like 10,600, the Shadow Phantoms 7,900, Shadow Arrow 78. So yeah, about $8,000 to $10,000 for a cruiser from Honda.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, you have to remember it's still a BMW. BMW's their DS, their dual sport bikes are amazing. They're also very expensive. So you're paying that BMW
tax.
that BMW tax. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at a 3 Series or you're looking at a Honda Accord.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's gonna be a difference. Yeah, but it is a very pretty bike. I'm sure those people who have the money and are looking for something that's not from Honda or Yamaha, but maybe not a Harley. They're probably the people. I'm thinking people will probably cross shop this with Harley. People who aren't hardcore Harley Davidson riders. People who ride Harley Davidson, they're hardcore. They're typically older than me, and that's the only thing they're going to buy because they very much loved Easy Rider when it came out.
That's their entire reason.
Their entire reason is Peter Fonda and
Dennis Hopper.
This is where I tell you this. Yeah,
done.
Or they can get an Indian motorcycle. I think Polaris owns Indian now. Yeah, that was I grew up with a lot of bikers. It's a weird thing to talk about, but yeah, my parents were friends with a lot of bikers, and so it was. But yeah, it was more about meth than it was motorcycles. But whatever, that's a whole other different story. None of those people would have bought a BMW. I can tell you that. They would have been or a Honda or anything. They were like, they bought Honda ATCs, but they were not going to ride a Honda cruiser. No, no. Their hog was not going to be a Honda.
Yeah, I remember I was at the LA Auto Show, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. They were showing out. They revealed I think it was an R18 concept still at the time before it went in production, and I remember was it Ian Robertson, I think, rode out on it. It was some high up executive from BMW rode out onto the stage on that R18 concept, and that sucker was loud. And huge.
It is, yeah. It's funny because the loudness is all behind you. So when you're riding, you're like, "Oh, this isn't that loud," but then everyone behind you is like,
"Dude, it's so noisy."
Especially if it was an inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That where you rode it. Oh yeah. So it's just echoes. It's just whoa, reverberates, and they probably pipe some in. just the sort of the whole
put some
loud pipe
mics
save lives thing.
Amplified it.
Yeah. Blah.
Nice.
Enjoy.
All right. Lovely. All right, Nicole, what did you drive?
I drove today, and I drove it a lot today because we went for our little mini family road trip. I was in the 21 Lincoln Aviator, and we took it up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, which is like a 2-hour drive from my house through twisty, turny roads. Like, it's these highways, nice swooping highways there, and then all these like steep hills and twists and turns. That is a fantastic road trip car. It's fantastic. It was so comfortable and so quiet. Like, you think about why it's like a 3-row SUV. It has seating for an entire army. It's huge. And you're kind of looking at like, who would need this? And as soon as I took it 2 hours up into the White Mountains and then 2 hours back, I'm like, oh, I would need this if I was doing family road trips because this is amazing. It is so soft, so comfortable, so quiet. It is all the things you want in a great big luxury SUV. And it's easy. You can carry on an easy conversation with the people in the second row and even in the third row, because I made my daughter ride back there for a little while. I'm like, go sit in the third row so I can see if I can talk to you without screaming at you. You can, because it's quiet enough. This is a hybrid. It's a plug-in hybrid. It has a surprisingly short all-electric range. It's only 21 miles of electric range. So you don't get a lot of EV range, but you do get some. Which is like, okay, that's cool. Like, we drove it around a little bit, and I was trying to eke out every last little bit. But it takes like 3 hours to charge at a level 2 charger. So fairly, I don't have the battery size in front of me, but it's, you're not getting a heck of a lot of range for your 3 hours.
It's about 16 or 17 kilowatt hours, if I recall.
Okay, so you're not getting a lot of range for your big battery, because it not only does it fit an army, but it's the size of a tank. So it's huge. But
it's not as gargantuan as an Navigator.
But it still feels big. Like, it's very boxy. It's very square. There's no, how they're like trying to coupify all the SUVs. Like, let's make a sloping roof. Let's make this look like it's sexy and small. And Lincoln's like, hell no. Big, huge, honking SUV. Great big everything. Like, I pulled into a parking space and it was narrow, but I had enough room, and the car was screaming. I was like, beep, 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 orange lights, red lights, beeping, everything. I'm like, look, if you weren't so big, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Just calm yourself down, car. So it feels huge when you're driving it, but powerful. It's got like plenty of power. You never, despite feeling big and like kind of almost unwieldy in narrow spots, it drives nicely because it's got enough power. You don't feel like, okay, come on, this huge thing is not moving. It has some really cool, like, luxury bits and pieces. This one had some upgrades that included a 28-speaker Ravel audio system that just sounded amazing. It was one of those systems that you listen to a song that you've listened to 100,000 times, and suddenly you hear extra things that you never noticed in the song before because the sound quality is so good. Like, oh, there's extra little background bits in there that never really came through before. And it also has 30-way adjustable seats. I felt like I was like counting like 1, 2, 3. There's individual extenders to support each of your thighs. Like, just need a little support in the left thigh, or you want a little support in the right
just
thigh?
In case you're not
you
quite
want
symmetrical.
Both thighs supported. Right.
Yeah.
And even you only want individual. You can do that. You can pick which thigh it is, and you can make the seats are super comfortable. I did have one weird thing. So it has this interior. The interior in this one is kind of like this burgundy. I forget the color now. I can't find it on here. But it's this really dark sort of burgundy, and it's leather, and there's a little bit of sueding like on the A-pillar. It's this very fancy. But okay, so in the 80s, my uncle sold Cadillacs, and he had this Cadillac, and I swear to God, the red in the interior in this, all I could think of looking at the dashboard is like, oh my gosh, it's Uncle Gene's Cadillac. Like, it looked just like it. I don't know that it's a good thing. The interior made me think of a 1980-something Cadillac, but that's what it looked like. But, over the top, but in a good way. I like this, but here's your thing. So if you want this fancy SUV that has seating for an army and has 21 miles of electric range and 77 cubic feet for cargo and a 10.1-inch touchscreen, with the fancy 1980s Cadillac red leather situation happening, you were going to pay $88,335 for it. That's a lot. Like
That's yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know it's a luxury SUV, and I get it. Like, luxury SUVs are not going to be, they're that big, are not going to be, $20,000 propositions. But that is a lot of money for an SUV. Like, you have to be someone who I feel like you would have to be someone who is driving a lot, like constantly in your car for long distances, doing nothing but like practically living in it, taking your kids to dance lessons and football practice and school and play dates, and to make that kind of money worth it in an SUV. It's a lot of money.
On the other hand,
it's a lot of luxury, but it's a lot of money.
If you have a lot of money, then you tend to be less concerned about that. So, if you are someone that can afford to spend, $90,000 on a new car, then you tend not to think about that quite so much.
I guess, but would you? I should say it this way: would I spend $90,000 on this car? I don't know. There's lots of other. There are other 3-row, 7 to 8 passenger options out there that I might.
Let's say, for example, Range Rover. Would you take this over a Range Rover?
No, because I like the idea of the capability of a Range Rover.
Okay.
Like I didn't go off-road in this. I just wanted to take a picture in the grass, and it's so low that I had to find a spot where I could nicely drive into the farm stand, because I'm like, I will rip that off. Where's a nice little spot? And I'm driving into grass. It wasn't even like I'm off-road. That's too big of a dip between road and grass. Can't go there.
What about, let's say, Audi SQ7, which has similar level of performance, similar in size to this thing.
I think the Audi drives much better than this car.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The Audi has a sportier, more performance feel, so I think I would still go Audi before. But I guess if you want the sporty thing, the Audi. If you want the I'm driving a floaty boat kind of thing, the Lincoln.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
has that for comparison.
Yeah, no, it's good. You mentioned, the 21 miles of electric range, and clearly in the case of this vehicle, Lincoln has tuned this thing more for performance, for acceleration, than for absolute efficiency. So they gave you a plug-in hybrid with 20 miles of range, but this is also the most powerful production Lincoln ever built. There's 494
and it feels that way.
Oh yeah. It scoots.
You feel it. 494 horsepower and 630, I think, pound-feet of torque. I think that's kind of crazy. So it moves. Like you put the hammer down on that to get on the highway, and you will have absolutely zero problem accelerating your giant SUV into even the heaviest, most congested, unhelpful highway traffic. So it has a ton of power. And there are settings, there are drive modes where you can choose to be, and I forgot the exact names of them, but like you can choose like a sports setting that's a little bit more aggressive. You can choose one that focuses on efficiency, so you can tweak things a little. I kind of like to I tried them all, but I like to drive, let's see our middle of the road kind of options. So for the most part, I drove in that, just like happy medium. So you can play with it a little. And I did get back a little bit, a good amount of range just from regenerative braking. Like I kept thinking I should be done by now. And it's like, oh no, I still have like a couple miles left. So I kept getting a little bit back. So that was, that's kind of good. But So I liked it. I thought it was a really neat car. I loved road tripping it. It was awesome. I could easily see if you have to like haul the family for 8 hours to grandma's, this is your car, man. Like drive this.
Yeah. And if you can't get comfortable in 30-way adjustable seats, then there's clearly something wrong with you.
Right? There's more going on than any car is ever going to fix. Yeah.
Right. Which, oddly enough, was exactly the situation that Dan Roth had. He could never find a way to get comfortable in those seats. But
Was that his big thing? He can never get comfy?
No.
I challenge him. Well, he should be able to find his way into a Lincoln Navigator. I feel like he should see if he can get comfy in these seats. I feel like he should know people.
I think you might know a person or two.
He might know a person or two who could make that happen.
Yeah.
He might know. Yeah, he might know a guy.
All right. And I think at 88,000, that was the black label, right?
Yeah, this is the black label, the 88,000. Yes. So I mean, this is like the most tricked out. The black label sort of like it's their fanciest version of all the Lincoln cars.
Yeah.
It's got all the luxury goodies. I mean, and it really looks and feels that it was really. It is definitely fully featured for that 88. You don't sit down and think, gee, they kind of skimped, they left out fill
all
in the
the
blank.
things.
No, there's nothing they left out. There's everything you could want to put on here. It pretty much has. Yeah.
And you can also get the Grand Touring starting. That's the plug-in hybrid starting at 68,000. So you don't have to go quite all in. I think 18-way adjustable seats with that one, but
why?
Well, then why even bother with life? I mean, really, if you're only going to go with 18 ways, forget it. Like, I don't want it now. Forget it. Why? Why do they even build that one?
Okay. All right. I also had a plug-in hybrid vehicle this week from Ford Motor Company that is kind of the opposite extreme of the Navigator. I had the what has appeared to be a bit of a unicorn for Ford, the Escape plug-in hybrid, which was originally announced back two and a half years ago when they first announced the current generation Escape, and it was supposed to go on sale in the U.S. late last year, and never arrived. They have been slowly trickling out over the last several months, but I guess now they're finally starting to deliver them in some significant volumes. And I've been pestering Ford to get into this vehicle for quite a while, for most of this year. Every couple of months, I'd shoot them a note and say, "Hey, you got the Escape plug-in yet?" "Nope." "Got the Escape plug-in yet?" "Nope." "Got the Escape plug-in yet?" "Yep, we got one. We can get you in it next week." Oh, excellent. Basically, this isn't fundamentally different from the regular Escape hybrid, except it has a bigger battery. Instead of a 1.4 kilowatt hour battery, it has a 14.4 kilowatt hour battery pack, and the same engine, the same hybrid drive unit. It's front wheel drive only because the hybrid battery pack spans across underneath the rear seat. So there's nowhere to put the drive shaft for the rear drive on the all-wheel drive version, and Ford opted not to put an electric rear axle on this thing, which they are doing on the Lincoln Corsair plug-in hybrid. So that's how they're going to differentiate the Corsair from the Escape plug-in, is with all-wheel drive. So that means that this has about 200 horsepower total between the 2.5 liter engine and the electric motor. It's officially rated by EPA with I think it's a 37-mile range. 37-mile electric driving range. So I've driven it longer distances a couple of different times this week. The first time I drove to Warren, Michigan for GM Investor Day, which we'll talk about later, and it was almost all highway driving. And doing that, I got about 33 miles of electric range before the engine came on. And yesterday, I took it and drove around, did a mix of urban, suburban, a little bit of light highway driving, more typical mix of driving, and got 41 miles before the battery was depleted. So the 37, I think, in a more in a fairly typical mix is very doable, and that's it's a little bit shy of what the Toyota RAV4 Prime, which is the plug-in hybrid version of the RAV4, that one's rated at 41, I think. But in real-world driving, driving basically the same kind of route that I did earlier this year with the RAV4, the RAV4 I got 43 miles. and with the Escape, I got 41 miles in the same kind of driving. So, this is, most people, it's like 75% of people drive less than 35 miles a day or something, I think is roughly the statistic. So you could, if you plug this thing in every night, most people can basically do all their driving electrically without using any gas. And then when you need to go longer distances, you just keep on driving because then it just becomes a hybrid. That's the thing with plug-in hybrids. The last generation of plug-in hybrids that Ford produced between 2013 and 2020 were the Fusion and the C-Max plug-in hybrids. And both of those vehicles were not designed as plug-in hybrids. The batteries in those things were quite a bit larger than the new generation battery that's in this Escape. And so what ended up happening with those cars is Ford had to stuff the battery in wherever they could. And you ended up, especially in the C-Max, you ended up with very little cargo space left in the back because you had this big stack of battery in the cargo space. And so there was very little room to put anything. And even in the Fusion plug-in, it basically consumed about half of the trunk in that thing. So it was a lot less practical. The Escape, the battery is substantially smaller than it was in those vehicles. It's entirely under the rear seat. And so there's no sacrifice in cargo space with this one. You open the hatch and you would never know that it's a plug-in hybrid. It's got the same cargo space as any conventional Escape, and the only visual difference you'll see is the extra door on the front, right on the left front fender for the charge port. Everything else looks exactly like any other Escape, which for good or ill. The exterior design I like, the interior. The ergonomics and the design look nice. The materials, not quite as nice. A lot of hard plastics. Especially when you compare it to something like that RAV4, which the RAV4 actually, surprisingly enough, has a looks like a more premium interior, or the Mazda CX-5 has a much more premium feeling interior than the Escape does. But it drives well enough. 200 horsepower is plenty. You can put it in you can select different modes. You can have just the normal hybrid mode and let the system decide when to use the battery, when to use the engine. There's an all electric only mode, and there's a charge sustaining mode. Where you hold whatever charge you have for later. So if you're driving home, you've got a few miles of electric range left, and you want to save it for driving through your neighborhood, so you can do that quietly as you sneak in late at night. You can do that, and there's also a charge the battery mode. So if you're heading somewhere where you want to and you don't have any electric range left, and you want to have some when you get there, you can actually have the engine run a little bit harder and charge up the battery to do that. I have driven a couple of 100 miles over the past week, and I've drawn, I think, more than half of the driving. I think it's about 185 miles I've driven, and over 100 miles of that has been electric only. So it's pretty good for that. The base price for the let me find it here. Base price for the SE trim level for the plug-in hybrid, it starts at $33,075 plus $1,245 delivery, so $34,250 roughly for the cheapest version. The one I've been driving is the titanium, which has all the nice goodies in there, leather and heated seats and all the other stuff. Came out to a total of $43,025, but there is, for now at least, still a federal tax credit available for these because Ford hasn't yet hit their 200,000 mark with their plug-in vehicles. So the tax credit on the Escape plug-in is $6,800 So, getting, for the base, if you get the SE plug-in hybrid, you can get that down to about 27,000, which is comparable to what you would pay for similarly equipped hybrid, regular hybrid version, and it's going to be a lot more efficient, give you a lot more electric driving capability. So if you're not quite ready to make the jump all the way to a full battery electric, and that your daily driving, is in that, less than 40 miles a day range, and you have somewhere to plug in every day, then it's worth a look at something like this. The RAV4 Prime is also another one to take a look at. It's a direct competitor, similar size. The RAV4 does have better performance, and it has all-wheel drive because they have an electric motor on the rear axle as well, standard equipment. It's a little pricier than the Escape is, but it's got like 300 horsepower total between the front and rear electric motors and the engine. So it does have better performance, but you're going to pay for that with
I've never even seen one of these things.
So that is the Escape plug-in hybrid.
I know. I've never seen one for realsies, so I don't. Wow, they really exist. Who knew?
Except for the charge port door on the driver's side front fender. Even if you saw it from the passenger side, you would never know that it was a plug-in hybrid because there's nothing to visually distinguish it. And like I said, I think I was looking up sales numbers. I think over the last 6 months they've delivered about 200 of them total. So, and I'm guessing that almost all of those probably went to Ford employees and not to consumers. Wow. But they're now actually starting to roll them out to dealers and deliver them in larger volumes to consumers. The reason why it was delayed, in Europe last year, the Kuga, which is what the Escape is badged as the Kuga outside of North America, the Kuga plug-in hybrid went on sale earlier, and they had a problem with, take a guess, battery fires, because the battery supplier, it was the same battery supplier that was also supplying some BMW vehicles in Europe. And they had a manufacturing issue with some weld splatter inside the cells that was causing short circuits. And so they had to have a stop sale on the plug-in hybrids. And that impacted production for North America as well. And they delayed that while they worked on, working with the battery supplier to work on some new quality processes and new testing procedures to make sure that they wouldn't have the same problem here when they launched it here.
Yay, good job.
So far, it hasn't caught fire.
Not bursting the flames.
That's a good thing. Hey.
Yeah.
Woohoo. Has not burst into flames. Nope. Put that in the plus column.
All right. Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
One of the hardest parts of getting older is feeling like something's off in your body, but not knowing exactly what. It's not just aging, it's often your hormones too. When they fall out of balance, everything feels off. But here's the good news. This doesn't have to be the story of your next chapter. Hormone Harmony by Happy Mammoth is an herbal formula made with science-backed ingredients designed to fine-tune your hormones by balancing estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even stress hormones like cortisol. It helps with common issues such as hot flashes, poor sleep, low energy, bloating, and more. With over 40,000 reviews and a bottle sold every 24 seconds, the results speak for themselves. A survey found 86% of women lost weight, 77% saw an improved mood, and 100% felt like themselves again. Start your next chapter feeling balanced and in control. For a limited time, get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com with code NEXTCHAPTER at checkout. Visit happymammoth.com today and get your old self back naturally.
Let's see. What do we have next? Where's the rundown?
Tundra.
Shall we go with... let's go with the Tundra first.
The Tundra.
Nicole?
So that's me. So I had the chance this last week to drive the all-new 2022 Toyota Tundra. They've been talking about this vehicle forever. They've released pieces of it, like we got all these details a little while ago, and then like, no, we're not going to let you drive it yet, and they finally let us drive it. So they've pretty much improved everything you can think of to improve with this. They've made a lot of changes to it, some of them bigger than others. One of the big things is that there's a new hybrid engine that you can get with it. That is a big deal, understandably so. There's a new transmission. They've added safety features. They revised the suspension system, and the infotainment is all new. Talking about the engines first, you get a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6, 389 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque. Or you get that as a hybrid that is 437 horsepower, 583 pound-feet of torque. You do feel the difference. It does actually feel much more responsive in the hybrid. It's not like you drive the standard engine and you think it's underpowered, but when you go step from one into the other, there's a noticeable difference between the two. I would buy either one. I don't know that I'm not someone who would buy a hybrid just for the extra, like to say I have a hybrid. I think sometimes things do just fine just with a gas engine. So I don't know that I would necessarily say, oh, you got to get that hybrid. You got to get it for the extra horsepower. You got to get it for the extra. Nah, if you want it, go ahead, but don't feel like you can't get by with a standard engine on there. The infotainment system, though, so they've significantly upgraded this, and I think I talked about another vehicle, a Lexus that has the same thing. Surprising, no surprise, because Toyota, Lexus, same company essentially. But the voice control on this is really, really good. I find that voice control, it's hit or miss. Sometimes I think it's just my voice. Sometimes I think maybe it's the ambient noise in the car. Sometimes it's raining too hard outside. Sometimes it's a Tuesday and it's too sunny. I don't know why I have trouble with voice control on cars, but I do. And I find that this works really well. First of all, it has two microphones, so it picks up the driver and the passenger. So if you're the passenger, you don't have to have you ever done that awkward, sort of leaning over to scream something at it because you want it to hear you, but it's listening by the driver? You don't have to do that. And then when it responds to you from wherever you're sitting. So the driver gets a response from those speakers, the passenger gets a response from those speakers. And it's a pretty intuitive system. You don't have to memorize commands like, Toyota, directions to, and then place. You can say, Toyota, where's the nearest whatever? Toyota, I want coffee. Toyota, find me this. And it's pretty good about finding what you want without having to come up with these specific commands, which is always a pain in the neck, because then if your passenger wants something, even if you've memorized all exactly the things that you have to say,
they might
in
not
the right,
be used to that vehicle. know the
Exactly.
syntax.
They don't know. And suddenly it's like, shh, let me do this for you because you don't know the right words to say to make the system understand what you want. Just be quiet. I'll find your coffee for you, you know? So I really liked the infotainment. I thought it was a leap forward. It's very fast. The screen is very, very easy to use. There's an optional 14-inch screen. Beautiful screen, very responsive. You can pinch and zoom on a lot of screens, but some of them when you pinch and zoom, it's like, oh gosh, suddenly you're just like, you're too far in or too far out. This one is responsive enough that you don't lose where the heck you are on the screen when you're playing with it. So I thought that was really good. They have a nice range of trims. They've got 6 different trims altogether. It includes the TRD Pro for like if you want to go out and do your, heavy duty going off-road and having some fun stuff. And there's the 1794 edition, which I feel like is their version of, like, every truck has to have a cowboy version. It has to have one that is designed for the guy who's wearing chaps and a hat and like cowboy boots and is going to the ranch. There might be one guy buying their truck that fits that, but they must have a trim level of their truck for that guy. It's the 1794. It has all this extra leather and it makes it look very upscale. I drove that one for a good amount of time and I think, okay, you know what? This is kind of growing on me. I'm going to put on the country music station and embrace my inner cowgirl here. This is kind of fun. So I like that. I think overall, I think people are going to be really pleased. I don't know if it's enough to get someone who is an F-150 guy and get him to be like, oh, forget it. I'm going for the Tundra. But I feel like it's going to make Tundra fans really happy. Where it doesn't match up is it doesn't have that crazy capability that you're going to get in an F-150. The tow rating and the payload ratings, those aren't up there. So if you're looking for like the absolute maximums that you can get, Tundra's not your Huckleberry. You don't want to do that. But really consider what you need. Much like people buy big vehicles, are you hauling air 90% of the time? Do you really need to have that payload? Do you really need to be able to tow, your house off the foundation? Maybe not. Maybe you don't. So, so overall I was pleased with it. We have no pricing. Pricing is coming out closer to the on sale date. So they seem to think it was later. Later. I feel like it's like in a coming soon situation. We actually had models that we were driving that were so pre-production. Some of them, like the trims inside were like fake plastic, like the cheesy plastic. Like I went to take pictures of the inside and I was
textured
like,
yet?
oh, do you guys have one with the plastic? Yeah, they were textured. Like you touch them with your fingers and they felt like hollow. Like they were really, so we were driving very pre-production vehicles. So it's not like they had very, they were finished enough that of course we could tell what they were going to be like, but you had elements. It's like that door panel isn't right and that center console isn't right. So, I feel like when they give you things that are that look like that, they're still, sort of rushing to keep up and get things rolling. So I don't know. They said it would be at least 3 to 4 weeks before we had pricing. So
did they
plan accordingly if you want a new Tundra.
So you mentioned towing, not matching F-150. How much can it tow?
Let's see. It can tow. The maximum towing is 12,000, and the maximum payload is 1940. So it's still capable. That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's not the highest number. I think that is the F-150 1400, 14,000.
I think it's 14,000, and Silverado and Ram are close to that as well, and they're both in that
right.
same
So they're all a little bit more. So there's the weird thing with trucks is people get very like, I need the truck that's the truckiest truck of all the trucks. Okay, then if you want to spend your money to do that and you actually need it, have at it. But if you don't need that, like think about that before you buy a truck. Like I feel like people get a little carried away with like, I have the biggest truck, the manliest truck, the most powerful, capable truck. It's like, okay, just because you can tow an extra 2,000 pounds and you paid a small fortune to do that, do you really need that? Like consider what you need when you buy a truck. I feel just in general, whether you're looking at a Tundra or anything else,
you're stepping on the TRX and the Raptors
to haul
business
that
model
one
right now.
trash can to the dump. You're going to be okay without the 14,000 pounds.
I mean, 99. Yeah.
I know. Oh, the power!
Most people don't need anything bigger than a Maverick or a Santa Cruz.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you don't need to do. It's You don't need to go crazy. I feel like they did a good job with this. There was no real complaint that I had. Like sometimes you get these all new, especially with something a big truck like this, and you sort of feel like, okay, you know what, 90% of this is good, but you guys so dropped the ball in this one area. I don't feel like they did. I feel like they paid attention. The infotainment got some upgrades. They got the hybrid powertrain. They have a good towing and payload, even though it's not the highest. They've got 6 different trims to choose from. They made the changes that needed to be made to keep this competitive and to appeal to truck buyers. And like I said, I think people who are Tundra folks are going to be really happy with this. I don't know how many people it's going to take away from other OEMs, but that's always a thing with trucks. Like, you're a Ford guy for life, you're a Chevy guy for life, you're a Ram guy for life. I don't know how much any
trucks
truck
probably
really
have the best owner loyalty of any segment in the automotive industry.
Right? So I feel, but I do feel like if you were looking for your truck for the first time, like you have not already committed your soul to a specific OEM, that when you look at this, and if you really pay attention, that you could end up saying, okay, you know what?
But no fancy tailgate options, right?
I liked it. So overall, positive feelings.
Have a little step,
there was
a little
no crazy
thing.
fancy tailgate. They don't have like the multi-pro, doesn't open sideways or flip down or have steps or speakers. I think there's like an optional, I want to say there's like an optional little corner step situation.
Yeah, I think they have that corner step that you can pull down like on the Titan.
What's the point?
And,
right, but that's as close as you get. There's no fancy. Sorry, Roberto. So Roberto's like, forget it, without the fancy tailgate, I'm out. It's like not having 30-way seats on your SUV. What's the point?
Did they give any indication of eventually offering other powertrains besides just the V6
future
and the
products?
hybrid?
Sam, you know the answer to that question. Let me hear you say it. What's the answer? We cannot comment
on future products.
Okay.
I can't believe you asked me that. Now I know what it's like to be an OEM. We cannot comment on future product. We cannot comment on future product.
What about? I think now there's only the crew cab, right? Or do they have?
The crew cab? Why do I feel like there's 2 cabs? No, there's 2. There's the crew. Oh my gosh! And what's the other one called? I kept getting the name. There's the
extended
they
cab.
call it a crew cabin. Is it a dual cab? So they have the one, they're both 4 doors, but the one you have like full 4 doors, the other one you have a small little section. It's like, so you do have, you've got 2 cabs and and you have 3 bed lengths. There's, which I think there used to be 2. So now you have 3 beds. So a little extra versatility in there. But yeah, you do get 2 cabs. The smaller of the 2, the one with the smaller back seat, it's pretty small. Like you can fit adults back there and you can sit, but that's definitely your...
If you're going to horse shows, you want the larger cab.
For a quick drive thing. If you really are regularly putting people in the rear seats, you want
for all our listeners who are dragging horse trailers around.
You want the larger cab. Yes.
Shout out to my horse folk.
Right.
Right, who are bringing giant horse trailers every. Woo woo.
There you go. See.
Yeah, I mean, I pull a horse trailer around.
Your horse is very upset.
10 or 12 years,
I'm just gonna say your horse is very upset.
So therefore, you need the most capability ever.
You never take me anywhere.
12,000 pounds of tow rating.
You don't buy me the good grain. Ugh.
Just leave me in the barn. You completely ignore me. Yeah. It's like I'm not even here.
All right. So on Wednesday, I went to Warren to the GM Tech Center, where just before the
investor
GM had their investor day for the Wall Street analysts. They do different stuff than the kind of stuff I do for my work. They decide what what the stock price should be for various companies. Whether people should buy or sell the stocks. That's not what I do. And they had a whole bunch of presentations. They had about, I think, 4 or 5 hours of presentations for the Wall Street guys. And before that, though, they did some briefings for media and industry analysts. And we got to see some of the stuff a couple hours ahead of the Wall Street guys, including getting a briefing on GM's new Ultra Cruise system. So I think Mark Royce initially alluded to or mentioned Ultra Cruise during a presentation he did about 2 years ago. And it's been mentioned a few times here and there, but they've never given any details about it until now. So this is GM's next generation beyond Super Cruise. So Super Cruise is GM's hands-free driving assist system, so-called level 2 system that lets you go hands-off in highway driving conditions. And you can use it on about 200,000 miles of divided highways across North America right now. And the latest versions of it are adding features like lane change on demand, automatic lane changing, the ability to work while you're towing a trailer, a lot of interesting features. Ultra Cruise takes it to a whole new level. Instead of 200,000 miles of divided highways, it's supposed to work at launch in 2023 on 2 million miles of all kinds of roads, highways, urban, suburban, rural, you name it. And then over time, they plan to grow that to over 3.4 million miles. There's close to 4 million miles of paved roads in the United States, and they want to get that up to close to 3.5 million miles at some point after launch. And what this system will do, instead of just when you get on the highway and you're in the lane, you hit the button and then it just takes over the steering and speed control. The Ultra Cruise system will actually let you put in your destination in the navigation, and it will do the steering and speed control for you most of the way to your destination. It will, they call it driveway to driveway capability. They say it should be able to operate in 95% of all common driving scenarios. So the places where it won't work would be like if you have really bad weather, or a new construction zone has just popped up, it might not be able to handle that, or some particularly complex intersections it might not be able to handle. But most other stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis, it will be able to do the steering, do the speed control. It'll read the traffic, the speed limit signs, know how fast it should go. It'll read traffic signals and stop at red lights, hopefully only at red lights and not at green lights like a certain other system. But it's not, they're not calling it self-driving because you still have to supervise the system. It's still a level 2 system. So you can't crawl in the back seat and take a nap. You can't play games. You have to keep watching the road, but you don't have to touch the pedals or the steering wheel. And it's going to have a more capable sensor system, higher resolution cameras, possibly imaging radar. They didn't specify what kind of radar, but they recently made an investment in a company called Oculi that does imaging radar, and they may be using that technology. And they're definitely going to have LiDAR on here. They have a Septon LiDAR sensor that's going to be on these vehicles. It's going to be on premium models. They didn't specify which, but starting with Cadillac, as you might expect. So it'll probably be on the new Cadillac Celestiq, their electric flagship sedan, maybe on the Escalade, possibly the Lyriq. And I think in the first year, they'll probably have it on 2 or 3 models, eventually growing it to about 9 models after a couple of years. But it'll be sold alongside Super Cruise. So it'll be an extra cost option above and beyond Super Cruise. What do you two think about this? Having a system that can do most of the driving for you, but you still have to watch the road and be ready to take over at any time.
It's kind of, it sounds like it's much, it's an improvement from where we've been, but I still think until we get to one where it lets you let go, like taking a nap, I don't know how exciting it is. Like, it's cool, like nifty, but you're still, if you're being a responsible adult grown up, like you should be when you're driving, if it says you have to pay attention, then you have to pay attention, and you can only relax so much because you're still driving, but you're still driving the car. Even if you're not steering, you're still in charge of driving the car. So I think it's very cool and it's very exciting, but at the same time, I don't know how excited you can get when it's like, well, I still have to be there. I still have to be paying attention. I still have to be really on top of it just in case something goes sideways.
I mean, I think it illustrates just where we are in the quest for autonomy, which is we're still a long ways away for like a true autonomous, level 3 they can drive everywhere vehicle. I mean, we can be all excited about it. The idea, most people don't like driving. They're angry. They're stuck in traffic. Most people all they're doing is commuting, which is really the worst driving possible. And so, once we get to that point, I mean, there is a reduction of cognitive load when you're using these systems like Super Cruise. I drove from New Mexico to LA with Super Cruise, and it was nice. But, and then if we drive from LA to wherever, or, I do a cross-country thing with Ultra Cruise, then, it's going to sort of reduce that load, but you still have to pay attention. And, they're smart about having, the in-car monitoring system. They're using LiDAR. They're doing all the things. They're having all the redundancy, all the things that Tesla's not doing. And they're not saying that it's autonomous. They're not saying it's full self-driving. And so I feel like they're being a bit more responsible when it comes to this. I mean, even Tesla's lawyers have said, it's not really self-driving when talking to the state of California, which is two completely different, messages coming from one company. Where GM's like, hey, we're making a Super Cruise better. We're calling it Ultra Cruise. But what happens after Ultra Cruise is like Super Duper Cruise and Super Ultra Mega Cruise. What happens when they get to level 3? Do they just call it something else? They're like GM scope. I don't know. But no, I think it's on one hand, you have to worry about, the complacency that these sort of systems breed when people just sort of stop paying attention. You can still be looking at the road and not be paying attention. And I think we've all done that where you're driving, it's a long drive, you've been on the road for a long time, and suddenly you're like, oh my God.
You're still zoned out.
You're zoned, yeah. And you kind of forget the last 5 miles you've driven. So, I don't know if this is better or worse than that because, you are looking at the road. So I think we'll see how it comes out and what it means. And even if it means, I still sort of keep my hands kind of always hovering near the wheel with these systems just because, robots. So we'll see how it, we got 2 years to figure it out, 2 years to see what happens, 2 years. Mercedes has their sort of, I think, I don't, they're not calling it level 3, but they have a on highway system that's geofenced like Super Cruise that you don't have to pay attention. You can like play Tetris while you're driving. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but that one's limited to like for that scenario where you're not paying attention. That's limited to 37 miles an hour.
Yeah. So
it's only for low speed traffic conditions.
Yeah. So every day on the way to work. Which is kind of the worst driving scenario. But both of those systems sort of show like where we are when it comes to autonomous systems from companies that are trying to be responsible because they realize this is a lot harder than anyone anticipated when we started, crowing about it 10 years ago.
Yeah, and speaking of, I don't think anybody realized how hard it would be. I think that's it. Everyone thought it was sort of billed as, we're so close, you're going to have this, just give us 10 minutes. And it's like tick, 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 tick. It's like been, 10 hours. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
There's a presentation I've given at a couple of conferences recently, and the opening slide, is, 2018 will be the year of self-driving cars. Okay, maybe 2019. No, 2020? 21? And I think later this year we do have some limited self-driving vehicles out there. Waymo's running some stuff in Arizona. I saw on the way up from San Francisco Airport to Sausalito the other day, I saw at least 5 different Waymo vehicles in San Francisco. Cruise is running their vehicles in San Francisco. Argo's running in a bunch of cities, and they're going to launch robo-taxi services later this year, but still with safety drivers. I did have a chance to talk with somebody from Cruise at the Investor Day event, and Dan Amon, the CEO of Cruise, did a presentation. He was one of the presenters, and he talked about their plan, their business plan, and how they're starting off with robo taxis and deliveries, but eventually, at some point, on a graph that they showed with no actual dates on it or numbers, they showed it hockey sticking up. As they add cruise technology to GM consumer vehicles. So at some indeterminate future point, you may actually have that from GM. Although I remain skeptical on that one.
Sometime in the future, things will make money.
I love that it's a chart with no actual figures or dates. It's like, this is what we want it to look like when. We don't know, but this is what we want it to look like.
It's what has become known as a Bezos chart. It's the kind of chart that Amazon's been putting out, for years, showing the growth in sales of Kindle ebooks or, Prime subscribers or whatever else, or Echo users, without actually applying any numbers to it. So it's always rather annoying. But talking to somebody from Cruise, they recently got their permit for driverless robotaxi operations in California from the California DMV, but they also have to still get a permit from the California Public Utilities Commission. And apparently that process, you have to get the DMV permit before you can apply for the PUC permit, and that takes about 3 months or so. So based on that timeline, it looks like Cruise might be ready to start driverless robotaxi operations for the public sometime in early 2022. So they might be one of it's going to be a race between them and Waymo to see who can get out there first, because Waymo also has their driverless permit for San Francisco as well. So we'll see which one starts operating in San Francisco first.
As someone who's been stuck behind the Cruise and Waymo vehicles in San Francisco, I tell you, they're not good. They just. When you expect a car to do something and it doesn't, like the person is lost or whatever, that is what it's like being stuck behind these vehicles. It's like being stuck behind a lost tourist. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe they've leaps and bounds improved their system during, the last 6 months or so. But a lot of drivers in San Francisco will probably tell you that oh God, it's one of those. I don't like being around them when when I'm riding a motorcycle. I don't like being around Uber or Lyft, Cruise, or contractors in white F-150s. All three of those people are just driving like insane. It's all. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know I'm going to back off or I'm going to speed up, but I want to get away from those three scenarios: the contractors, the Uber, Lyft drivers, and the Waymo and the Cruise cars, because you're just like,
all fair. Okay.
Yep. All right. Last story for this week. Robbie, you and I both had a chance to drive something this week, the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. What did you think?
Okay, so we can all sit there and argue about whether or not the Mach-E is worthy of the Mustang name. And I think there's more people who are in it's fine, it's a Mach-E, but it's not a Mustang than there are in, it's fine, let them call it a Mustang. I do believe that you can call it a GT, though. I think that it deserves that badge on there. It was, all-wheel drive, a lot of power. They're doing some good work with the suspension system. There's a couple things that I found that I wasn't completely super excited about. I feel like MagneRide should have been a lot better when it comes to launches. I don't think it gives enough. It doesn't stiffen the back end enough, so I kept getting wheel spin from the front tires, which is physics. But if you set up your suspension a little bit better, you don't get that. You get all four tires, grabbing at once, giving you all that extra, that torque and that power. But overall, the GT Performance Edition, both of them are outstanding. They're GTs. They're proper Ford GT. Maybe a Mustang. That's up to you.
Did you get a chance to to try out Blue Cruise on 101?
I did. I tried out Blue Cruise. It is not quite as nice as Super Cruise. And it's just from the drive, there's a little bit more ping-ponging where, kind of as it's trying to find the center of the road, sometimes, the cars will go back and forth. This is something we had a lot with adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist when those probably 6 years ago. You got a little bit of ping ponging with those systems. It has a little bit more ping ponging than the than what Tesla's offering up, and what Blue Cruise or Super Cruise is. And at one point there was a corner that was just a bit too sharp that I took control because I thought that we were going to glide into the other lane where there was another car. For the most part, though, I think it's their first. This is their first vehicle that I've driven. That it's on. They're going to have over-the-air updates, which means it's just going to get better, unless they make a horrible mistake and make it worse. So I think if you're going to pay for that, it's you're going to feel a little bit better because it's going to get better. And those hand-free systems are nice. I missed the fact that there's no light on the steering wheel. Like Mercedes, BMW, GM, they all have some sort of light system on the steering wheel, and not having that is sort of weird. When originally, remember when we saw Super Cruise the first time when they showed the picture on the steering wheel, like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then you drive it, you're like, oh, no, that's cool. Now I feel like it's ridiculous that Ford doesn't have that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I had a long conversation with Dave Pericak the other night about that, explaining, why I didn't think that Blue Cruise is as good as Super Cruise. And the HMI, the interface is one aspect of that. With Blue Cruise, you're limited to the graphics that they have in the instrument cluster. And, Ford uses, for obvious reasons, a predominantly blue design, and so it's not as immediately apparent when it's changing modes, or when you need to take over control or what mode is available to you, because it sort of blends in more. Whereas with Super Cruise, with the light bar, you got blue, green, red, and it's right in the lower periphery of your vision all the time. When it has changed. It's very obvious, very unambiguous. And like you said, sometimes one of the flaws in Blue Cruise, which when I had an early drive in it a couple of months ago here in Dearborn, I was talking to one of the engineers on it who was riding with me, and I asked the question. One of the things that Super Cruise has done from the very beginning, when they first launched it in 2017, is they use the maps, the high definition maps, as a long-range sensor. So they're looking about 2 miles out down the road, looking for curves in the road. They know the curvature of all the radius of all the curves. And depending on what your set speed is, if the system thinks your set speed is maybe a little bit too high to get through that curve at that speed, it will automatically slow you down a little bit as you approach that curve to a speed that you can get through safely, and then resume your speed. So if you've got it set at 80 miles an hour and thinks you can only get through there at 67, it'll slow you down to 67, and then as soon as you get past the apex, it'll speed back up to 80 miles an hour. Ford is not doing that for some reason. I think they will eventually, but they're not doing that yet at launch, and that's why sometimes you see on the curves you'll feel it start to drift out, and you have to take over control. And that's not good.
Yeah.
If it's supposed to be a hands-free system, they need to be able to deal with that kind of scenario. But I thought the handling in the Performance Edition, coming back down Pacific Coast Highway, I thought was great. It for a vehicle that weighs 5,000 pounds and is significantly taller than a traditional Mustang, although by SUV standards it's actually not very tall. It's like 6 inches lower than a Ford Edge. So being in that range though, it feels really good, going through those curves at fairly significant speeds. And at one point I was up behind like a 2010, 2011 Mustang GT, and I had no problem at all keeping up with him going through those curves. Off the line, the GT Performance Edition will run 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds, which is about the same as a GT500, a Shelby GT500. And it feels like it. It does it without all the noise that a GT500 makes, but it actually does it a lot easier because with the all-wheel drive, you're not struggling just to try to get grip. The GT500 has a lot more power. It's got 760 horsepower versus 480 in the Mach-E, but the Mach-E can actually put that power and that torque to use, whereas the GT500 still struggles with that. What else? Oh, one cool feature that they added for the GT, for both the base version and the performance edition. The main difference is for the performance edition, you get summer tires instead of all seasons, Pirelli summer tires versus Continental all seasons, and you get the MagneRide dampers. But for both of them, they added a new driving mode. They already had Whisper, Engage, and Unbridled mode. Now they add Unbridled Extend, which is meant for track use or if you're autocrossing. And what that actually does is it pre-cools the battery when you engage it, and then actually limits the total power output a little bit. They didn't say exactly how much, but it reduces the total power output a little bit so that it will stay within a band where you can get consistent performance. So instead of 480 horsepower, you might be getting, 420 or something, 430, and it'll be able to maintain that performance level over many laps, which is, I think, if you're going to take this thing to the track, well, I'm not sure why people would, but if you're going to take it to the track, or just to an autocross,
they will.
You're going to be able to get much more consistent performance with it using that, and it also reduces the front motor because the GT gets the same motor front and rear, and so the nominal setup is you got 50-50 torque split front to rear. It rebalances it so you're getting 40% in the front, 60% in the rear, so it feels a little more like a rear drive car, and you can get the back end out a little bit more with the accelerator pedal.
Yeah, without unbridled, it does tend to a little. It does tend to do some understeer. The unbridled thing is there's to set it up though. If you've been driving around, you just can't turn it on. That's it. So I kept I was driving, and I drive the roads that we drove all the time. There's this these nice windy roads from Mill Valley to Stinson Beach, and that's the road I drive all the cars on. So I know it pretty well, and I know how to make sure I get the most. I can test the performance of the vehicle with them. But because of that, I couldn't turn Unbridled Extend on because I had just been pushing the car too hard. And I was like, oh, I should turn this on. It's like, no. But I did get to use it the next day at the autocross, which was nice. So it does. It makes it a bit more neutral you'll get some oversteer, which is always fun.
Yep. All right. Any other thoughts on the Mach-E GT?
Nope.
Okay. I did sit down with Dave Pericak and Darren Palmer to talk about the GT, and also with Darren about some of the stuff that Ford is doing with charging, including their new Charge Angel program. And I will tack those interviews on the end here after we do our Q&A. So we do have a couple of questions that came in. Let's do the one that came in last week after we recorded. Let's hit this one first. When do you see the tipping point? This is from Dave Vesma, or Dan Vesma. When do you see the tipping point where it will no longer be more environmentally responsible to keep an older ICE car on the road rather than buying an EV?
I think that comes. If you already have a car, it depends on how old it is. I think it also it's efficiency. It's miles per gallon. So if your car right now is getting 10 miles per gallon, I don't know why you're. But if you're getting something that's 30 to 40 miles a gallon, then it's probably going to be a little bit further out. But I think as battery technology gets better and better, and you're able to put lighter batteries, smaller batteries, and get the same range, I think that's when you go past parity when it comes to not just the price point of EVs versus internal combustion engines, but also you start going past the carbon footprint of a new EV versus a new ICE, because you're using less battery, which means, you're using less materials,
less energy to produce the vehicle.
Yeah, less energy to produce the vehicle.
Right.
So I think it's still a little bit out. Versus like keeping something that you have. I mean, I'm a firm believer in buy used cars. Drive a car until it falls apart, and that's sort of where I am. But I think we're getting there. I think it's still just a little bit out.
Nicole,
I think there's some time to go yet. I think I think the same thing. I think we're at a point where the technology has to sort of get to a little bit more affordable, a little bit more environmentally sourced. It's still so early, really, in the EV battery situation. I mean, it feels like we've been dealing with these for a while, but in the grand scheme, we really haven't. And, these technological advancements tend to happen in, little tiny increments, and then maybe there's a leap, and little tiny increments, and then there's a leap. And I think we need a few leaps forward before it's something where everyone says, okay, it really makes absolutely no sense for me to have this ICE vehicle. I really should be making the move to an EV. This is, I think we have a ways to go. I couldn't put a date. I couldn't say 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, but I feel like there's a ways to go yet.
Yeah. And I think, even when we get to, pick any random date in the future, 2025, 2028, whatever it might be, it depends on the vehicle that you're replacing. If you're replacing something that's 25 years old, something that was built in the 70s or 80s, as an example, or even the 90s, that doesn't have the same emission controls we've got today. It's not as fuel efficient. That's going to be a different story than if you're driving something that's built in the last 5 years or in the next 5 years. If you come 2025, if you're driving a 3-4 year old Ford Maverick, with the hybrid, you're getting 40 miles per gallon, or a Prius, or a RAV4
Right.
Prime. These are all very efficient vehicles, and the incremental benefit from replacing a relatively new vehicle that is very efficient with an EV is probably not going. There's probably not going to be a net benefit yet at that point, as opposed to replacing something that's 20 or 30 years old. And it also depends on how you use that vehicle. Like my Miata is 32 years old, but I don't drive it very much. So the impact of that vehicle is relatively minimal. But if you're driving an old car, 50, 60, 70 miles a day, for a commute, that's a very different situation. And, that's a vehicle that is probably worth replacing. You're going to have a significant impact from replacing that with an EV. And, if you're driving something that old, it's probably because you can't afford a new EV. And so, you're probably going to replace that with a used EV at that point. But, that's a good thing. You want to, once something has been built, ideally you want to keep using it for as long as you reasonably can, so that you're not consuming that energy and those materials to produce another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're driving something exceptionally old, but like you said, a lot of times when you're driving older vehicles, there's two reasons. Either it's something that's you're hardly driving at all, and it's almost become sort of a classic thing that you have in your driveway because you love it, or you simply can't afford to get a new car. And if you can't afford to get a new car for the time being, there are very limited options when it comes to EVs if you want an affordable one. I know there's a good number of EVs out there, but very quickly you go from things that the average person can afford to very expensive vehicles. It just don't make sense for most of us, whether they were an EV or not. Most of us wouldn't spend that kind of money. So it's a hard proposition for anybody when it comes to affordability, even if you want to do the right thing in terms of having something that's efficient and good for the environment.
You need a $20,000 EV is what it comes down to. Because your average, even if it's 30, starts at 35 or whatever, that's a usable EV. You're like, well, I get $7,500 of tax credit. Yeah, but if your tax if your tax liability isn't that high, then you're not really getting that money, and you're still paying all the. It's the whole.
Right.
Yeah, it's a whole sort of crazy. And then you can lease it, but
$40,000.
Yeah,
if you make $40,000 a year, you're probably not paying that much in taxes, and you're not going to get that $7,500.
Right. So it doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're not getting that
Yeah.
stuff.
There's a whole group of people who will never help, and it's like, that's awesome. There's a rebate that I will never be able to take advantage of.
You get $500 off.
You know?
That's why you could lease, but if you're not making a lot of money, typically you don't have very good credit. That's someone who when we.
And then the leasing is hard, and your lease is too, so you're still stuck in that.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But anyway, the moral of the story is we need $20,000 EVs. Someone get on that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's actually one of the things Mark Royce did talk about during the Investor Day. Is they're going to have a $30,000 electric Equinox coming in the next couple of years, and they're also working on stuff that's closer to $20,000 that should be out in the next few years. So we'll see if automakers can actually achieve that. But at the very least,
you want them to be. No, but then you wonder too. Like sometimes they come out with these and like this is going to be great. You look at it, you're like, but it feels like a play school car inside. Like they make it so they have to make other things so cheap in it. You're like, wow, is this like it's just ugh, where's that? You gotta get that like.
The good news is with all these new EVs coming, that there's going to be a lot more used ones in the next few years. So hopefully, people will be able to find some decent choices of used EVs. And in the U.S.,
hopefully,
they sell about 3.5 times as many used cars every year as new cars. Most people that drive never actually buy a new car in their lifetime. They only buy used cars.
I've never purchased a new car. I've leased 2 new cars, but I've never bought a new car ever. Never, ever, ever.
I'm like the human who's never bought a used car. I've only ever bought new cars. I think I was afraid of used cars for so long. Like, I was going to buy the lemon. I was going to get all the lemons. They were going to end up in my driveway, and it was going to be a bad choice having gone with a used car. And I'd be like, no, why did I do this?
All right. Next up, from somebody called Rebecca Drives. Should features like automatic parking have generic names like automatic parking, or something brand specific like Smart Park?
They should all have a uniform name. We don't have like that when it's like ABS for brakes. It's not like. They don't have 85 different names for that. It's ABS. They don't have 85 different... Breakathon. Toyota Breakathon. We don't have all the... It's confusing. I actually had a website once where they asked that my entire summit was, we literally are creating a glossary, and it's going to be like a page for each OEM, and we're going to write what the name of the tech is and then what the heck it does, because someone's like, lane keep assist, lane alert assist, lane keep assisting, lane keep assist, lane helpful, lane helper, lane... Like, it all means the same thing, and like the average person's like, what the heck? I think having a unified thing...
I stopped using brand names for most all of that stuff. I'm like, oh, it has adaptive cruise control. The driver's assistance system, it has adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist, and that's what they get. Whatever their weird name. I remember having like, wait, what's it called? And then companies were changing their names. I think Mercedes changed the name like 4 times over the course of like 2 years at one point, and I was just like, A, no one knows what that is. And B, everyone knows what adaptive cruise control is. It's adaptive, the driver's assistance package. Their hands-free system. That's way easier than, now that we have Blue Cruise and Super Cruise and,
it's
too many things.
It's too
We're just going to have to tell the automakers, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, we've decided we're not paying attention to all your brand names.
I agree. I do the same when I'm writing stuff. I don't. So far, I still use Super Cruise, Blue Cruise, those level 2 systems, because there are enough differences between some of those, that I need to distinguish those. But for anything that has become more ubiquitous, I just use the generic names, and who cares what the automakers call them in the press releases and the marketing materials.
The infotainment system.
All right.
That's all you need to say.
Yes.
Infotainment.
And the last one is from Adam, and since it's now coming up on the middle of October, shockingly enough, and Halloween's just a couple of weeks away, if you were to design a modern car for the Munsters, what new vehicle would you start with? I believe George Barris actually started with a Model T. Happy Halloween. So what would you use as the basis for a new Munsters car?
I would use a Challenger because it's got kind of funky lines to it. Like, it's kind of different. I feel like you could have fun. I feel like you could turn things into scary bat-like wings and stuff. Not like actual flappy wings, like 1950s car wings. You could, I feel like, okay.
That's what I was going to say. You could cut
Challenger Demon.
Just cut the top off the Challenger. Just cut it off. Cut it off.
Yes.
Like put remove the trunk. Just made it like one long thing. Have that stadium seating like you had in the hot rod. Boom! You just got a Challenger. It's ridiculous. You're gonna take any corners. Everyone's gonna fall out. Who cares? You're just going in a straight line. It's big and loud and ridiculous, and that's what the Munsters car is. A big, loud, ridiculous Challenger. with everything cut up. Just take it to the shop. Go nuts.
And you can paint it some crazy color, and like your racing stripes can be like black or like orange stripes or green. Green is evil in Munster, right? Orange, like
you can leave
green.
You can leave those little protectors on, so it really terrifies people. Everyone gets mad at those.
Right?
Like, why?
Take them off, dang it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that.
I like this plan.
I like that. All right. And on that note, we will call it a show, and make sure you stay tuned for the interviews I did with Dave Pericak and Darren Palmer. See you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody, this is Sam. This week I had the opportunity to drive the 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E GT, and while I was at the drive program, I got to sit down with a couple of the subject matter experts, executives involved with this program, among other Ford EV programs. I sat down with Dave Pericak, who was the engineering director on the Mach-E program, and has subsequently moved on to being the director of future electric vehicles for Ford. Apparently he's working on some very interesting stuff that he was not yet at liberty to talk about, but I did have a chance to chat with him about the Mach-E GT and what separates it from the rest of the Mach-E lineup. In addition, I also talked with Darren Palmer, the director of electric vehicles, or the general manager of electric vehicles for Ford North America. And let's hear from Dave first, and then we'll go into Darren's conversation. Thanks.
Dave, you were chief engineer on the S550 Mustang.
Yes.
Then you were engineering director on the Mach-E.
Yes.
Now you got the Mach-E GT. What were you trying to achieve with this one? And what did you do to make this a true Mustang that nobody could argue with?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I mean, to do this, we embraced Mustang. You have to know Mustang. You have to understand what it means to be a Mustang. And that's what really fueled everything around this GT, right? So it was pushing all the boundaries, including those things that we know to do. So I told you, we lowered it 10 millimeters. We put the MagnaRide, suspension on it. So everything all the tricks that that we pulled on the Mustangs, we definitely applied to this product. And so this was really just getting the right group of people together that know Mustang, that said, if we're doing this, then watch this, right? And so when you marry it up with instantaneous torque, you've got the future Mustang.
So, okay, you lowered it.
Yep.
What else did you do to create GT from the standard Mustang?
Wow, so
you got more power.
You got a ton more power, right? You got 634 pounds of torque. The Brembo brakes. The brake system. What did you think of the brake system? Is amazing.
Brakes
right?
are fantastic.
Yeah, right. So you have to have that stopping power and that linear feel of the brake system. You have to have that. The character of a Mustang is something that there's a few people inside Ford that know how to achieve it, and then those who are lovers of Mustang know it when you drive it and when you see it. And that all came into this. It's hard to, people always think it's like some recipe book that I can lay in front of you that says, here's what you do. But there's so many variables that go into this that you have to understand what a Mustang is, how it's supposed to feel, how it's supposed to perform, and then you pull all the levers that you have at your disposal to achieve that. And that's what we did with this. I mean, when you drive this machine, if I blindfolded you and somebody, you would say it's a Mustang.
You mentioned the brakes. You've got big Brembo brakes on here. They're still, I mean, they're not quite as big as what you would get on a V8 Mustang.
Right.
On this one, are you doing when you're using the brake pedal as opposed to just using regen? Are you blending regen and friction braking? Okay, because one of the things you mentioned, linear brakes, and it does feel really linear. And I know that's hard to do. What did you guys do to get that feeling that makes it feel so natural?
Well, it took a lot to figure that out, because as you're leveraging the regen, which could feel unnatural, right? You have to blend that in so that you are getting that natural feel, the feel of your foot to that caliper, which is what Mustangs are known for, right? I mean, that's that linear feeling of that. So it was a lot of back and forth between how much regen is too much regen, and then, how do you blend that to get that natural feel? And so our engineers did an amazing job with the software and everything to be able to stay on the side of my foot feels connected to that caliper versus, that's regen kicking in. And that is, it's a tough balance, Sam, to be honest with you. It's something that it took a long time to achieve it. The first several attempts at it, you could feel the regen, and it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel natural. So, we've got some proprietary approaches to how we've done that, but it worked out to be where we're very happy with the result. I mean, it feels extremely natural.
Was the software for that all developed in-house, or was
in-house.
that with your supplier?
In-house.
Okay, yeah, because I know having worked on electro-hydraulic braking for hybrids, back when I was still an engineer, it's a hard thing to do, to get that seamless and
super hard.
I was not able to detect any transition there between friction and the regen.
It's good to hear you say.
It's very, very predictable. Which, especially on a performance car like this, is really important, is predictability, knowing that you give it a certain amount of pressure, you're going to get a certain amount of decel.
Well, and I'll tell you, and that's the other thing. So when you have an electric vehicle, the linearity of the accelerator and the brake are hugely important, right? And what hopefully you felt when you were driving today is how linear even the accelerator pedal feels, right? With electric vehicles, you've got all that power that's instant. It's almost like a light switch. I mean, you just flip, and there it is, right? It's there. So the first time we went out and we did some of this stuff, we were not very linear in the delivery of that power. And you can imagine how you can upset a car, as you're in the middle of a turn and you're looking to blend the power, and and you get a snap of power. So creating that linearity both on the accelerator and the brake were extremely important, not only for a performance vehicle, but also to get that feel of the Mustang. Because when you drive this thing, you also, you'll feel that it's spirited, it's lively. You can get the back end to step if you want to, not out of control, but that's typical of what Mustang is, right?
Right, and even when we first drove the other Mach-E's a year ago, almost a year ago, that was one of the things I noticed right away, was that ability to as you back off, getting that weight transfer and getting it to turn, just
getting
with
it
weight
to rotate,
transfer.
absolutely.
That's something that I wasn't anticipating when I going into that.
And you haven't been on the autocross yet, I don't think.
Not yet.
Okay, so you'll know tomorrow when you go there. With many Mustangs, because you've been around for a long time driving them, you can drive them with the pedal, and you're going to find that tomorrow you're going to be able to drive this with the pedal, just as you would a Mustang. You're going to get it to rotate, you're going to get it to do whatever you want it to do, but very little steering input and a lot of pedal adjustments. Right?
Well, speaking of that, one of the new features that you've added on the GT is another variation of the drive modes. You've had Whisper, Engage, and Unbridled. Now you've got Unbridled Extend. So explain that.
Yeah, so Unbridled Extend was, so as you look at the EVs and what your challenges are with them, you have all the power in the world. It's amazing. But if you want to sustain that over a longer period of time, there's a lot you have to manage. And so what we did with Unbridled Extend is we said, look, we want spirited driving, but we want it over a longer period. So to do that, we do a couple things like proactively cool the battery. So if you go an unbridled extend, we know what you're anticipating to do, and so we set lower cooling points, if you will, of the battery. We are anticipating the kind of heat that you're going to generate, and so we're already ahead of that, right? We're adjusting the all-wheel drive system to change the bias. We give you what is typically a 50-50 kind of bias. We're going to go 60-40. We're going to give you 60 in the rear. We're going to free up, the stability and traction control. There's a lot of things that we're doing in that unbridled extend, but it's all around delivering a more sustained lap time and fun to drive versus a peak, right? Anyone can go out and run a one lap, flyer.
Right.
But if you want to go ahead and run sustained laps and have a ton of fun over a longer period of time, that's what unbridled extend has been designed to do.
So, for example, if I would assume you guys taking these things out to Gingerman or somewhere and spent days, testing this, how long can it sustain the consistent level of performance?
Yeah, so that's an awesome question, but a hard answer to give you because, as you know, it depends on driver, it depends on, conditions that day, it depends on a lot of things. But what I will say is it significantly increases the number of laps that you can run and achieve the similar lap times. That's all I can, because you know how it is. It depends on who's driving and what's going on that day. But it will significantly improve how many laps you can pull out.
Yeah, I mean, track days are a very popular thing for a lot of Mustang drivers. Would somebody that drives an internal combustion Mustang today, do you think that they would want to take this vehicle to a track day? And
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So you know what? It's I've spent a lot of time on the wheel of a lot of cars and many Mustangs. The torque delivery and just the acceleration that you get out of this, you can't help but just smile ear to ear when you get out of this thing. This is a fun track day car. Now, there's no doubt we're pulling a lot of energy out. We're depleting the batteries, just like everyone else is. But I will tell you that if you want to go have a ton of fun, you put it in an unbridled extend and you're just going to have a blast all day long.
Did you have to make any major changes in terms of thermal management for this to keep the battery and the motors and things under control?
No, we did. We made a lot of changes with the GT because of the power delivery that we're requiring. You can imagine that right from the core of the battery all the way through the entire wiring system and everything else, the kind of heat that you're actually going to generate. And so we've got a ton of upgrades inside the GT to be able to handle that thermal and control the temperature. So, for sure we did.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else about the GT that people should be thinking about?
Well, they should just be thinking that this is what...
Other than it's as fast as the GT500?
I was going to say, think about it. We have a vehicle at a price that is just ridiculous that delivers a 3.5 second 0 to 60. Unbelievable acceleration, instantaneous. You got to just go get one. You just got to go get one.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
All right.
That was good to talk to you, man.
Thank you, man.
All right. Darren Palmer, Director of EVs for North America. General Manager of
these
EVs
days
for North America for Ford. So we were talking earlier, obviously we're here driving the Mach-E GT, which is a fantastic vehicle. But there's all kinds of other stuff that goes along with owning an EV and having an EV business. One of those things is charging. And Ford's been doing some interesting things on the charging front. You've got the Ford Blue Oval Charge Network.
That's right.
But it's one thing to just have connections to all the chargers. But tell me about what you're doing for reliability, because that's been a thing that a lot of people have complained about on non-Tesla charging networks.
Yeah. So one of the things is the non-Tesla charging network. Some of it is older, and it's quite extensive. But some of it's older, and so how do you guarantee the quality you need for customers? Because you never want to send a customer to one that doesn't work perfectly. So first of all, our strategy is to put together all the best networks in America and made a software platform that's really easy to integrate to. And so everybody who we ask to integrates, and then people can approve it either with plug and charge or approve it on the app. Simply, only no cards, just that one thing.
The Ford Pass app?
Yeah, very
on
simple.
Your phone or in the car?
Yeah. So we did that. Stage 2, we monitor reliability from a distance. You can obviously wire it remotely. We see 99.5% of people get a charge when they're going to get a charge. We also monitor first-time plug-in charge. Do they get exactly what they want? And less than 100% get first-time plug-in charge, which means it can be inconvenient for people, not perfect. So we said this no good for us. And we're particularly getting ready for next year when we launch the Lightning, where people have trailers and things, and they can't afford any inconvenience. So we got to a certain level, be using remote, and there's many parts to the system. There's authorization, negotiation with the car, payment authorization, and other signals. There's a lot of different signals there, and most of them we pick up when it's not working. Sometimes you can't. So I took the decision early this year. Okay, we got it to high, but it's got to be perfect. So we started a program called the Charge Angels program. So we have a set of Charge Angels, which are people with a Mustang Mach-E that's fully instrumented, and we send them to areas where we haven't seen perfect authorization of the chargers. They'll go and test them all themselves, and if they see an issue, they can at the same time pick up the whole digital trace of what went wrong. It gets fed back to our network immediately.
So you know if the problem was in the car software or the charger or the...
And if it cannot be immediately fixed, we'll remove it from the network. So we don't send anybody to a charger that doesn't work. And we'll warn them immediately, because on our car it shows you the rating and some feedback from the network. You can see that in the vehicles, so you immediately start warning people. Obviously we work with the networkers first of all, and we tell them they're working really fast to try and fix it, so they may not have been aware, because they can get stuck on, he was waiting for a signal for a car or something like that. So there's many different types of faults, and that's why I need to send people out at the moment until the network's almost perfect, and then we can stop doing it. So we wanted to accelerate reliability, so that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and that reliability is going to be a lot more important going forward. Today, do you have an idea of what are the percentage of EV owners that have off-street parking at their home?
Yeah, I don't have that percent yet. What I do have is how many are charging at home, and it's huge. Over 80% are charging at home, because you can see them charging at night, and it's an extremely easy way. It's a no-brainer way to own an EV. You're never going to go back. It's so convenient, right? If you don't have it, we're thinking about that and how to support them best. One is having a very large network, because if you don't have one at home, you have the choice of driving to DC and charging, and we have a huge network, or searching for an AC nearby and maybe parking your car there overnight. And we have 63,000 plugs, so for a lot of people, they'll have one nearby, and you can just park it over there for the night and charge it slow. So they both ways. I'm also looking at what might happen next, and I think there could be a thing I'm calling grazing happen, where chargers start to be at lots of places for hairdressers. The supermarket store you go to, the clothes store. This is
where you're going to be for 20, 30, 45
You go
minutes.
and you plug and you go in and you come out and grazing, I call it.
Opportunistic charging.
Opportunistic, yeah. I think that will grow as well. And for some people who don't have a charger at home, that can avoid them having to go and wait at a DC.
Yeah.
But we want to support both.
Yeah,
whatever they want.
Because once you get past, because right now I think, the early adopters of EVs, are largely people that, can have off-street parking. They can charge at home. But as you start to expand the population of EVs, and you start to get more and more EVs in the used car market, which is actually the majority of what people buy, 3.5 times as many used cars every year sold as new cars. You're going to get a lot more people that don't have that off-street parking, where they live in an apartment or they live somewhere where they have to park on the street. And reliability of charging and access to charging are going to be really critical for that population of drivers.
Yes, it is. So what's great for customers is that already now you've got a network that size. It's pretty sizable. But a lot of the US, and you can travel a lot of the US with DC now as well, especially with a 300-mile car. But it's going to rapidly expand, because now companies are starting to see people are buying the cars, they're growing, and something like the F-150 Lightning, you can see that's going to be a very popular car, and it's going to drive much more adoption. And now it's worth investing in the network. So we're seeing huge increases in the network. Over the next couple of years, you're going to see it grow really, really large. And so reliability will be key, because you don't want to inconvenience anyone by driving somewhere where it doesn't work. So that's why we're concentrating on reliability now, just making sure it's ready for it.
One of the challenges that I know I've experienced driving EVs, especially in places that perhaps not familiar with, like this past summer I took a Mach-E and drove it from my home near Ann Arbor to Traverse City in northern Michigan. And, there were places, I charged it more frequently than I needed to, because it had plenty of range. But I wanted to experience the, charging at different locations, different charging networks. And one of the challenges I've seen, not just on that trip, but, many times over the last several years, is actually finding the chargers. Oftentimes, on the navigation, it'll say, okay, go to this store, and, there's a charger there. Or go to this parking lot, there's a charger there. But they don't tell you precisely where it is. And unlike a gas station, where they typically have a big sign sticking up 40 feet in the air, that says, here's the, Exxon station, or BP, or whatever, you don't get that with chargers. They're usually, 5-6 feet high. They don't stick up much above the cars. So, are you talking to your network partners about how you can either make them more visible or get more precise location information in the nav to help?
Yeah, I mean, that's in everybody's interest. So when we do talk to our partners, they're super keen to do that. We found a lot of them are just pure in the wrong spot. Mm-hmm. And I mean, our navigation, many navigations now, they're accurate to within a meter or two. So there's really no reason why it shouldn't route you right to the step of the charger. So if we find ones that are off, and we do, we then work with the provider to correct it. Why wouldn't we? It's in everybody's interest. But really, your nav system should be able to take you right next to the charger, right? You just follow the thing on the screen. And a lot I'm following now, DC fast charge, when I've been around the country, they can be in the middle of a car park somewhere, but you just follow the route on the screen, and it points you, and it drives you through the car park. I can see the lanes of parking in the car.
As long as you've got that precise information.
And you just pull up to it, yeah. So most DC fast, those ones, I've not had much problem with it. Some AC, older.
Sometimes they'll be in a parking garage, and they might be on the second or third floor.
Then they've been more difficult.
Corner somewhere.
But we allow extra information in there, so we can fill up that information to tell people too. So you can see the charger and you think, there's 5 stories. I wonder which one it's on. And you can write, it's on the 5th story, so you can find it.
Is there anything to allow drivers to put that information in, if they find something, or to provide some feedback about?
Yeah, so at the moment they can do that in some of the sharing apps. Okay. And I'm talking about, how can we allow more input? I'm also interested in, so we're doing the Charge Angel. I'm asking, how might we get the fastest information for the next person? How can we help them? One way would be to allow them to input. So I'm talking about that at the moment, so that they can, if they just found it's broken, it broke that minute, they can then input to help the next person. So this is something I'm looking at now. Of course, software on the car can all be updated over the air, so it's a pretty trivial thing to do. But that's something I'm thinking of. With anything that it takes to get the latest in it, because if somebody ever does go to a faulty charger, or it just went faulty, I want them to be able to tell the next person.
Yeah. One other issue around DC fast charging is, for reasons of protecting the life of the battery, the health of the battery, all EVs, as you get closer to 100% charge, they slow down, because you don't want to overcharge the battery. That's bad. The current Mach-E's, when you get to 80% state of charge, it drops from charging fast down to 10 kilowatts in a step. And that's going to change, right?
Yeah, so that was one of those where we set up what we thought most people would use. It turns out to be, yes, that is what most people use. They charge at home, they go on a trip. And most trips, you're actually better to charge less than 80. It's faster, and go to the next charging stop. That's the optimum route for the maximum speed. But human nature can be, I want an extra buffer, or I would like the most I can get. And it seems like they're not that happy with 80%, they'd like more. So we listened to that, said, okay, that's what people want. And we did a bit more research on our systems and said, can we give them a bit more and allow them to charge to 90 at a faster rate? Turns out we can. So we've just finished signing it off now. We're dropping it into cars for production just next month, and it will drop into over-the-air quite soon as well. So that it will
people that have bought the cars over the last year, they'll get an update.
Yeah, it'll go from 80 to 90, yeah. And yeah, it's surprisingly how many people talked about it, but we learned because we're listening. Okay, if people want something different, we'll listen to them. And that goes for many things. So we hear them on, for example, hey, I love the interface, but sometimes I'd like a little X in the corner to tell me which window's open to close it, because there's no home button, right? That's part of the interface. So we heard you. So we put it on. So the cars you saw today, they have that on. And it is better. Yeah. And so we learned from the customer and we changed it. And that's the whole point, right? And we did some things with the heated seat control. People wanted a bit different. It wasn't clear there was an auto part to it. We thought it was clear, but it wasn't. So we changed that so you can see more clearly, and we're going to keep doing that. And I can improve, or my team can improve latency as well. So you'll see the latency is better on these GTs, it's faster. Yep. And then it's just continuous improvement. It's great fun. I mean, we could never do this before.
Yeah. And, one other thing that you're able to do now is, you talk about improving the charging capabilities, but now when it charges, you're also going to have more range than you had before.
Yes, we are. So we're really proud of that one with the team. So we set up the vehicle to last for its full life, have a full warranty for 8 years. It's at least 70% of its battery range. Of course, in real life, it's much more than that. So, but that's just the backstop. And we said, well, now we learned more about how people are using it and the conditions, and we can see all of the temperatures of the car. We say, well, we can probably give more because it isn't in that most extreme circumstance, except very hot parts, Arizona, going up a hill for hours. This is not most people. So if you're not in those conditions, why not give you more? And so we have decided to give more. So we at the moment, we're going to give another 3% of battery. And that's also already rolled out in production, and now is coming to everybody else over the air as well, who already bought the car.
I mean, that's amazing. This is one of the things that obviously Tesla pioneered, was this idea of, your car, instead of, it being the same 10 years after it rolled off the assembly line, it can be continuously improved. Even with the hardware that you've got, you can learn from the way people use their vehicles and the feedback you get, and make it better over time. So.
It's amazing. I mean, we love it. We never had that ability before. People love it. The thing you bought got better. It's like your phone. It's like your tablet. And these cars like these, it does feel more like a digital device than it used to. And it truthfully is. So you can do that. So we built into this car, every module can be updated. Even things, the gear shifter can be updated. I don't know what we're going to do with the gear shifter yet, but it can be updated, and we think something up later, we'll be able to do it. So, yeah, it's amazing. And we're giving range. You can potentially give performance. You can give mode changes, games, useful utilities, navigation, unlimited. So we're just getting started, actually. I mean, we're only in our first updates now. We did about 130,000 updates now, something like that. We're just getting going, right? So, and you see in these cars, you see Sketch app and so on, but we got much more coming.
Yeah, I think earlier today it was mentioned that for this first year of production, you're going to be hitting the target that you had of about 50,000 units in the first year. And with the demand for this thing, are you increasing capacity?
Yeah, we are. It's already going to go up significantly in the next year, and we're continuing to build up capacity because we never advertised really the GT yet. We're already sold out for the first model year, and that was a more premium car. We sold about 50% performance edition as well, which is even more premium car. We're seeing massive demand, so we are working on capacity continuously. And the same on the Lightning. I've done huge capacity increases.
Yeah, they've already
actually.
talked about that they bumped the capacity for that from the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center to 80,000 units, just double what was originally planned.
Yeah, and we're still seeing that demand rising from customers. So it shows they're more ready for these products than we realised. And part of it that they feed back to us was the extra things they do.
Yeah.
That's what they love. So, 400 litres of extra space I never had. And they say, it's almost like an SUV now. I can store things under there. It's much more useful for me. Then they see it as a leisure vehicle, and then the bidirectional power has gone crazy. So with the incidents that have happened around the country, people like the idea that they can be independent, and really not for a lot of money, and much less than ever before. And people like that. So we're seeing a huge pull on that system at the moment. We're getting ready to launch that. It's very exciting.
And there's also the e-Transit, which should also be launching pretty soon as well.
Yeah, that's launching right now. And that one, is quieter on some people's radar because it's a commercial vehicle, but really it meets the needs of a lot of commercial drivers. It has new high-tech telematics for control of your fleet and efficiency. We have solutions for charging in depots, and in many cases it pays back on day one. So if it pays back on day one, it means you can be more competitive than your competitors, and you can make your business better. So it's kind of been quiet, but we've seen huge demand now, and it's going to change the world. But, it's a different type of vehicle, so you don't see as much news about it.
Yeah,
it's going to quietly become a leading delivery vehicle in the world.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.